You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright Review.
What's up, creeps, and welcome to a brand new epic film, guys. Fresh Fright Review. I'm Justin, and I'm once again joined by our good friend Phil from the Spookhouse Podcast. Dude, what the fuck is up?
What is up, Justin, my podcasting brother from another mother? Thank you so much for texting me this morning and seeing if I wanted to do this last minute. I was literally gonna text you and ask the same thing, like, "Hey, man, maybe like Monday, do you want to record on this?" So
get this out there because, ladies and gentlemen, as of this recording, this movie, Hell of a Summer, is out in theaters today, April 4th. Well, actually, they use the date of the Friday. They still do that. I don't know why, but movies come out on Thursdays. They've been coming out on Thursdays for like 15, 20 years now, so it's out right now. If you end up hearing this on Friday whenever I release it, it'll be out. But Hell of a Summer, it's the brand new slasher comedy from Finn Wolfhard. That's right, the guy from Stranger Things, the new Ghostbusters movies, among other things. His directorial debut with Billy Burke. This is an idea, Phil, that he's had actually for, I think, 4 or 5 years or so. And his inspiration was Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead. But again, we have another new slasher this year. So far, we've had a couple. I had the opportunity to see Screamboat, which I'll also be covering. Any interest in Screamboat at all, Phil?
Other than morbid curiosity, not really.
Not really.
It's about on the same level as Popeye the Slayer Man. Like,
will
I watch this? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. With that one, I literally don't give a flying fuck about a killer Popeye movie, but the fact that it is Art the Clown himself, David Howard Thornton, under the mouse costume, and the same production team as the Terrifier movies, that's what sparked my interest a little bit more than, say, these other run-of-the-mill exploitation IP horror movies. But I'll get to that one on that review, but I've been seeing a lot more slashers than normal, and of course we've got a couple more left this year from my memory. But you had an opportunity to see Hell of a Summer early at Alamo Drafthouse in your area. We did not screen it early.
Yeah, I feel like I saw it, probably like
weeks
2 weeks ago?
Yeah,
it was a very early screening with a live stream Q&A with the cast, so that was cool. They did a little chat like 30 minutes after.
Very cool. Yeah, absolutely. So the premise, ladies and gentlemen, for those uninitiated is, as the counselors are getting Camp Pineway ready the night before the campers arrive, a mass killer begins killing the staff. Sounds pretty fucking cut and dry, man. And that's what this movie really is, to me at least. Before we get into the actual nitty-gritty of the review, did you have any anticipation for this movie leading up to it?
Honestly, not really. I'm not the biggest Finn Wolfhard fan.
Oh, really?
He's one of those guys. I don't dislike him, but I'm not going to be like, oh my God, Finn Wolfhard, fuck yeah. I had very low expectations because the trailer, I believe I told you, I was like, is this going to be great value Scream? Wacky horror comedy.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised once the movie started.
That's good to hear. Yeah. Finn Wolfhard, I like him. I've liked him in everything I've seen him in, though I will say he is one of those character actors that kind of plays the same dude in almost everything. He still looks the same as he did in the last season or last few seasons of Stranger Things, just a little bit taller. But I do think he's very talented, and knowing that he had this idea long, long ago, probably from being on the set of Stranger Things, like, hey, what would it be like to make our own camp slasher? And camp slashers are very few and far between. We don't get them very often anymore. I think the last large camp slasher that I could think of in recent memory is when they did the Fear Street Netflix camp slasher. I mean, obviously we had last year In a Violent Nature, which is like a really good camp slasher.
Yeah. Right, Brady?
No, Brady, yeah. Wherever B Ratty is right now, he's also agreeing with us that In a Violent Nature is a very good camp slasher.
Exactly.
But they are nowhere near the level they used to be. It's its own subgenre. So I was actually happy when I saw the trailer. I was like, okay, this looks like a flashy, modern, fun camp slasher throwback. And I'll say I slightly agree with you on initial thoughts on Hell of a Summer. I think that it's way more Wet Hot American Summer than Friday the 13th, but I think it does a decent job of blending its own brand of quirky humor with, bloodshed.
Yeah.
I would have preferred maybe, something a little bit harder edged. And I'm saying this considering there are some pretty brutal kills in the movie, but Phil, you got to admit, man, the past couple years we've been really spoiled with brutal death scenes in slasher movies.
Sure. And yeah, you're right. I'm not exactly, I wasn't expecting to see like full on head decapitations and gnarly kills like that. And we didn't really get that. There were some clever kills. I liked the opening kill.
Yeah, that
with
was
the knife in the headrest.
The headrest, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, before I go any further, as we always say, it is full spoiler, absolutely.
Sure.
And usually our listeners that have been listening for a long time, they already know, unless we say non-spoiler, it's always full spoiler. But just, in case you're wondering, yes, full spoiler. But yeah, that kill, I actually laughed pretty hard at that kill because the girl sits in the car trying to escape, and you don't even really hear a sound, not that loud of a sound, and then she like kind of slips her head off the knife off the back of the headrest, and the killer's just kind of sitting there like trying to tug the knife out of the headrest and having a hard time with it.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty clever moment, and immediately I chuckled to myself because the movie starts blank screen and you just hear a guy trying to tune a guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this sets the camp scene perfectly. Dude. There's always that guy like
everywhere you go, man. Everywhere you go, at the beach, during the summer, there's always a guy with a guitar that probably can't play worth a shit, and he's sitting there thinking that he can.
Yeah.
But I actually had to check, because I got a screener for this, that the screener was working, Phil, because when I heard sounds and didn't see any picture, I was like, oh my God, it's a corrupted file. And then all of a sudden, finally we see an image flash onto the screen. Very creative way of opening the movie. And I will say, absolutely right from the get-go of this thing, that there is a lot to be impressed by in terms of direction, especially being first-time directors of Finn Wolfhard and Billy Burke. There's a lot of visual flourishes in this thing. It looks really good. And obviously, if you're a student of the game, you're on lots of movie sets. A lot of our best directors we have today were people that used to be actors or PAs or grips or some other position on a filming team. And they just took their time to pay attention. And it's very apparent to me that these guys paid attention because it's a very solidly made movie.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because one thing I did notice, just in basically every scene of the movie, there were several different positions of the camera, lots of unique movements. The cinematography looked good, and I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, okay, they put care into this. It wasn't just, hey, let's show up and be funny and put out some bullshit. So, yeah, behind the scenes in that regard, they did their homework.
And also the writing, because they wrote and directed this thing together. So I think this brand of comedy really rings true to their perspective on what modern, younger audiences are going to be looking for. I don't think this is a huge throwback. A lot of people leading up to this, I read some articles where, because it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival last year, people were saying it's like a great throwback. I'm like, well, it didn't really feel like a throwback to me per se. If you're thinking throwback, I think Wet Hot American Summer in terms of the tone of those old camp comedies, because not only, Phil, do I like camp slashers, I love camp comedies.
Sure.
I love the Meatballs movies. I love any of those screwball, raunchy comedies from the 80s. If there's tits, kids swimming at a fucking lake, and there's cabins and boozing and drugs, I'm there for it, man. I just, for some reason, ever since I was a kid, I love those movies.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of takes that genre and turns it on its head a little bit. I think as soon as the movie starts introducing you to the characters and you hear the dialogue, they're kind of, in a way, making fun of, like, the youth of today, in a way.
Yeah, and at that Q&A, they did say that they wanted the humor to be timeless. They didn't want to make, like, all Gen Z jokes. So they made it intentional to have that moment in the movie where he's like, camp policy, no phones allowed. So they wanted to take away the modern technology.
Which I loved that choice. Yeah. You don't see these kids sitting on their phones the whole time.
Exactly. And, like, the type of humor that's in the movie, it applies to all age ranges. I mean, just insecurity and uncertainty of the future, and so there's a lot for every age range to grasp onto.
Absolutely. There's a coming of age aspect to this. I mean, these kids, we don't necessarily get an idea how old they are, but we know that our main character, Jason, is like, 24, and they're calling him old for still being there as a counselor.
Yeah.
So you have to imagine these kids are late teens, very early 20s. Mm-hmm. There's one line that I laughed at so hard, because we talk about this subject all the time on Epic Film Guys, and particularly in terms of connection with horror movies. The character of Ari, played by Daniel Gravel, he's sitting there trying to talk to Shannon at a picnic table about what his movie's about. And he says, like, something along the lines of, the whole movie is an allegory for, like, trauma because of my peanut allergy. And I just literally laughed out fucking loud so hard at that, because there is a sense to this movie, even though they're trying to make it timeless. In a way, Phil, it is specific to a time, because it's showing, or showcasing rather, how coddled and fucking entitled, and how almost like the way kids are today, how the youth is. Like the arguments about, dude, you're like 20 feet away from me and you have peanut butter and a granola bar or something like that, and the kid's freaking out. Like, there is a sense of constant outrage from these kids over the smallest things.
Yeah. I would say like 85% of the humor works for me. You can tell that they went to the low-hanging fruit tree to pick some of these jokes off, like, the vegan character. Okay. Like, oh my god, it's Beyond Meat. It's like,
she's the token vegan character, because that is kind of a stereotype that all vegans are huge assholes. I've had some vegan friends that are super chill. They'll sit next to you as you're eating fucking sloppy barbecue, and they're cool, man. But there are some people that are like, don't get that piece of meat 20 feet in front of me. Though I will say that the girl that played the vegan, or the character rather, her death is fucking epic. She's trying to sneak. She's vegan, but behind the scenes, it's the middle of the night, and she sneaks into the cafeteria, and she's trying to eat a double cheeseburger, and the killer tracks her in there, and she's about to take a bite out of this double cheeseburger, and she turns around, sees the killer standing there, and she's like, but it's Beyond Meat, and then she gets fucking...
Yeah. That was like the only character where I was just... Maybe it's because I've been vegetarian for 11 years, and I literally
I forgot. See, I was about to make fun of vegetarians. I'm sorry, Phil.
See, hey, you know why you forgot? Because it's not a big part of my personality. Who gives a shit what my diet is? I literally never talk about it or preach it to people.
That's true. Yeah.
So whenever I see stuff like this, it's like, oh, yeah, let's reinforce that mostly untrue stereotype. But that's a me thing.
No, I get obviously. It, man. I think, but the movie does partake in having archetypal characters of the camp slasher. It has the douchey jock guy. It has the kid that is overconfident in himself because he's so insecure. It has the character that is trying to find himself, still can't figure out what he wants to do with his life, as in Jason, but he loves running this camp. It gives him a sense of responsibility and a sense of being needed. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Chris Finn Wolfhard's character and the character of Shannon, they're hooking up. That's young love.
Yeah.
So each one of these characters kind of fills that gap. I thought it was funny that they're making fun of vegans a little bit, but because that scene was great where Bobby's sitting next to Miley and he's trying to basically trying to get with her, you know?
Yeah.
And the minute he says he's a Scorpio, like Gosling, like Ryan Gosling, she's like, ew, and just like leaves. So it was so funny.
But yeah, speaking of like the whole cast. Hang on, my cat's crawling on the keyboard. Get down. Okay. Speaking of the whole cast, I realized like by the end of the movie, I could have paused it and told you things about the entire cast. Sure. Like I knew their names, I knew their quirks and their likes and dislikes. So all these characters were well fleshed out, which I wasn't expecting going into it. I really enjoyed the character of Jason. He's definitely like the anchor of the movie. We're fully invested in him. So overall, the cast was, with the exception of Vegan Girl, was great.
Okay. No, I agree. I love the character of Jason.
Yeah.
I mean, them naming him Jason is really on the fucking nose.
Little on the nose.
Dude, Fred Heshinger, who plays Jason, I've loved him in so much stuff I've seen him in recently. He kind of plays, much like Finn Wolfhard, a very similar character. Did you get a chance to see the comedy Thelma from last year, the comedy action movie?
I did not.
It's about a retiree, an old woman that falls victim to a phone scam and sets out to find her perpetrators. Well, her grandson is played by Fred Heshinger, and he's really good in it. He plays like almost the same character as he plays here, where he's like, I'm in my early 20s and I'm not doing anything with my life except for watching my grandma. But there's something that's like so lovable about him as an actor, and the character here. I just loved him. He's like the only one that seems to truly care about being at this camp, that, you know, this Camp Pineway. He's singing the songs. He's mentioning the mottos that he's learned over the years. He's this kid that's been runner-up as the archery champion for like 5 years in a row. There's just like this, you kind of have to love the character, you know, and his performance is wonderful as well.
Yeah, and sorry, I forgot like the actress's name, but his crush in the movie.
Oh, Abby Quinn, who plays Claire? Yeah.
Yeah, she was great as well. And there was actual chemistry between those two. And without it, the movie doesn't really work, or not as well as it did.
Yeah, for sure. So. I will say, the movie does walk that fine line of feeling kind of like a real movie, because it is shot like one. The acting is top-notch. It has production value, but also being like a straight-to-streaming movie. This just feels like something that could have just been slapped on Netflix or Hulu.
Sure.
Even from the titles, it just feels like that kind of thing that I'm so used to seeing, where it's a really cheap, low-budget movie. It was made for $3 million, though I'm starting to wonder where that $3 million went. I mean, I'm trying to logically think, like, okay, how much did it cost to rent the camp? You know, how much are they paying these actors? There's not, like, I didn't even really notice any CG. I'm not sure if you did.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, there's practical effects, blood and gore. So $3 million even. I mean, I don't know. But I guess it's 2025, so it's still a super low budget. That's uber low budget.
And I was also wondering, I mean, this premiered in, 2023?
Yeah.
So why did this sit for so long? That was another reason why going into it, I was like, ugh, that's never a good sign when something sits for like 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know. It premiered, and I think apparently Neon picked it up last summer, and then that was it. And that's when I saw the trailer for the first time. I think it was in the fall or so, around there. Right. So just trying to shop that shit. I could ask the same question of the Toxic Avenger remake, which had a premiere 2 years ago at South by Southwest. And apparently, you know, based on people I know and the reactions I saw, the movie was a huge fucking hit with the audience. And then no one picked it up. But I will say, as a precursor, myself and the god of podcasting himself, Loisauce, have already seen Clown in a Cornfield, which also premiered at South by Southwest. And I can tell you, Phil, that audience reactions from festivals where people are very, very intoxicated can be misleading.
All right.
So sometimes when you hear a lot of hoopla, because I've been to these events, not a lot of them, but sometimes premieres of movies, or there are events where they'll splurge on like, hey, have free drinks, free food. You know, the audience reaction can be a little bit more uppity, a little bit more energetic and excited. But I'll save words for Clown in a Cornfield for that review, which is already recorded and it's going to be released closer to the actual release of that movie, it's a spoiler free. But in the case of this one, this looks like a lean, mean little killing funny machine, and it should have been picked up by somebody. Right. It's possible, Phil, that streaming services did approach them and want to pick it up. I mean, Finn having a relationship with Netflix through Stranger Things seems like a given. But he probably wanted this thing to go to theaters, and as we know, Netflix does not give a shit about its theatrical window at all. They have the opportunity, they have the ability, they just don't ever take the opportunity very often to do that. So it's a shame.
Right.
But I'm glad that this is getting a theatrical release. Now the question will be, will it do very well? I mean, this year in general, the box office has been dying, man. Companion... The Monkey, when you name a lot of the genre stuff that has come out that we've seen, Death of a Unicorn, I thought was a solid movie. I didn't get a chance to review it, but it's already out of most theaters already, and only its second week. So
yeah, I feel like maybe as far as horror goes, Megan might actually stand to be like a huge hit.
Oh, Megan too, yeah. The trailer just landed today, I think.
Yeah, I could see that bringing out a lot of people. But let me ask you this about the movie.
Sure.
So there's a bit of a twist, if you will, a reveal, where I remember thinking, don't like this. Like when it's revealed who the killers are.
Young hot couple wanting to be known for being killers, famous, viral obsession with fame.
It just
Scream 2 a little, Scream 4 a little bit in there.
It just felt a little half-baked. Now, I will say that I'm glad that the finale of the movie was not Finn Wolfhard and his girlfriend tied to a chair while they take off their mask and reveal their entire deviant plan. I'm glad they didn't go that route, but as for the reason behind everything, I was just like, it's a little lackluster.
Lackluster, totally agree. Though realistic in today's climate, I think when we first meet the character of Demi, Jason greets her at the camp. Everyone first got there. They're all ready for their first day to get reinitiated with the location, and they're waiting for the owners to show up, and they're going to start prepping for the actual campers to arrive. And she's just instantly like ignoring him, doesn't care what he has to say. She's on her phone. The first thing she does when he shuts the door into her cabin and says goodbye is she's starting to stream like, yo guys, I'm going to do a tutorial. And that's the current social climate with most people now. I mean, us being content creators, we can attest to this, but those are people that are even deeper into that world where they're so obsessed with it. Like that's their whole life. Them doing the thing and streaming it or posting it. It's not actually experiencing the thing. And there is this obsession today for young people with fame and being rich and wealthy. And they don't want to have to do anything. They don't want to do the in the middle part. They just want the fame. I think there's a lot to be said about that with that theme, that these kids are just like, fuck it. We just want to be super like famous. It doesn't seem like they care about being in jail, but...
Yeah, I mean, it didn't ruin the movie for me or anything. And when you think about it, the horror side of this horror comedy is kind of takes a back seat. This is like
absolutely
80% comedy, and the horror stuff just kind of felt like an afterthought.
Yeah,
and I was almost wondering, like, should this have just been a camp comedy? And it would have played just as well, like, because I liked all these characters. The horror stuff is fun, but...
Well, first and foremost, I gotta say, I did not like the killers, as in plural, the masks.
Yeah, that also felt a little lazy.
I mean, we've seen devil masks. I mean, Haunt, which is a great Halloween-themed slasher movie from a couple years back. There's a devil mask in that's rad. We've seen devil masks in plenty of slashers in the past 30, 40 years. I don't dislike the idea of it. It was okay, but honestly, Phil, my perspective on hooded killers is we've seen too fucking many of them. Give me something that looks different. That's why I love Art the Clown so much. That's why when I see a killer, I mean, like I said, Screamboat, no spoilers, but it's a killer fucking mouse, So I'm like, oh, visually it looks different. It's something a little bit more unique than just guy, black fucking hooded outfit, or even worse, the thing that I hate the most is just dudes in black hoodies with their hood up and a stupid mask. Like, that's literally like, listen, Hush did it. Mike Flanagan, I'm like, okay, cool. He did it. He's allowed to do it. Anything after that, I'm like, come on, man. Really? I mean, even Wingard did it with You're Next. I don't need just a white dude with a fucking black hoodie on with a stupid mask he bought at, Party City.
Well, if I tell you their inspiration behind the mask, they said during the Q&A, they were like, somebody asked what was the inspiration for the devil mask, and they were like, well, the movie's called Hell of a Summer, so I started thinking hell, like devil, and, we're a fan of, like, vintage circus style art, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, but hell, devil, come on, guys.
It's a little on the nose.
Yeah.
I will say, like I said, the mask itself, though, it does look cool. It's just I'm sick of like that imagery.
Yeah, it's just generic at this point.
I agree with you in terms of the horror being in the backseat. The comedy's at the forefront. That's why I said in the opening of the review, it's Wet Hot American Summer, way more than it is Friday the 13th. The only other issue I have with that is none of it's ever scary. There's really no suspense. The horror, as well as the comedy, it's mixed in with the comedy to also be gags. Like, one of the best kills in the movie, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but earlier in the film, Jason is teaching Claire how to use the bow and arrow properly. And later, when Jason is tied up by one of the killers, he's basically trying to pretend like he's telling her to, like, let me go, I'm going to die. But he's actually using the same instructions that he used earlier in the film to tell her how to shoot the bow so she could shoot the fucking bow and arrow in the killer's eye. I loved that. That was very clever, very charming.
Yeah, that was a good moment.
But it's not frightening. There's no suspense to any of it. And especially, like you mentioned, the big reveal of this couple wanting to go viral. They're going to kill everybody. It happens like in the beginning of the third act, so it's not like a last minute reveal. You already know who they are, so it kind of removes any tension, because up until that point, you're still wondering. You're still kind of guessing like, well, we know it's not this Jason character. He's way too fucking nice. I knew they were never going to do that. But who else could it be? Is it Claire? We don't know who these other characters, so once they reveal it, it's like, okay, there's no more mystery to the situation. Yeah,
they just kind of showed their cards a little too early with that, and it was like, okay, well, what now?
Yeah.
It takes away all the mystery.
Little to no mystery. But I mean, we also get a really cool fight scene between Mike, he's one of the killers, spoiler alert, and Bobby. And Bobby tries to defend him off in the rec room cabin, and he gets his ass whooped. But that's a really great visual.
Sure.
There's a fire that gets caught, right back to the Hell title. They got the fire in there too. But I really enjoyed that fight scene. It was very well done. They're beating the shit out of each other. He goes through like a ping pong table, and I will say, I am sick and fucking tired. Every movie, Phil, I've already counted 3 this year, including this one. There might even be a 4th, where a knife in the neck and blood squirts out is one of the kills.
Oh, yeah. Companion.
Every fucking movie, dude. I'm telling you, I swear to God, this is probably the 3rd or 4th movie this year where the guy's down on the ground, someone's down on the ground, they find a knife, they have a knife somewhere around, and they jab it into the throat, then the killer holds their throat, blood squirts out, and they die.
Yeah, you're right.
It's becoming like, I don't know. It's just as boring as seeing just like a butcher knife going into somebody. Like, do something else. That's the thing that I kind of took issue with this movie. You said it earlier. There's some decent kills. That's true. They're decent. I liked the arrow in the eye. I liked the opening kill. Other than that, we get to see this character Ezra, who's like this theater geek, super likable character, though I thought they were fucking hilarious. Matthew Finlan, who plays Ezra, they were actually maybe the most entertaining character to watch in the movie.
He gets bear mace in the eyes. Dude, there were some seriously funny moments in this, and I'm actually going to rewatch it in a couple of days. I'm taking my niece to it. She's like 17 or 18.
Perfect audience,
And I forgot what movie you and I were talking about where we need these types of movies where they're like introduction movies to younger generations. Like, this is perfect for that.
Absolutely.
While still also being entertaining for old fucks like us.
Yeah, I think I said it earlier, I kind of hinted towards it, that it really is made for a younger demographic, but there is enough in there, I think, for the old school slasher fan to be like, oh, cool. It's almost like when you take your kids and they're really little to an animated movie and it has adult references in it. I mean, this is a little bit more hardcore because you're getting brutal kills and stuff. We're just a little hard to please on the show here, just being honest. But, you know, there's references to adults to laugh at and chuckle at while their kids are enjoying the movie. I think there is plenty to enjoy about Hell of a Summer. I don't think in terms of it being a slasher that it's going to be all that memorable. I don't think it's going to be hitting anybody's best of lists or anything, but that's okay. I don't think every movie has to do that, and I don't think that's what it's being made for. It's a great entryway. Like you said, it's a great gateway movie for people to like the genre, and also a really solid directorial debut and writing debut for these people, these talents.
Sure.
It just goes to show talent's there, and to showcase it, let them make a movie. And they made a movie here. I just think in terms of kills and it being exciting or anything, in terms of the horror aspect, it was a little bit lackluster, but we're hard to please. Like they said, the Ezra character, his death, kind of cool, but there are also a lot of scenes that are off screen, which also happened back in the day too. I mean, not every kill back in the 80s you got to see. Some slashers in the 80s that I love, you don't even see the kills. Or you maybe see one or two of them, and they're not that grisly. So I think we're spoiled as modern film goers and the horror audiences.
And they did say in the Q&A that they look, anytime they go back and watch the movie at screenings or something, they're like, oh, God, why did we do that? Why did we write that? We should have done this. So it shows me that they're aware that, you know, they got a little bit of work to do. Like, this is a strong debut, but
absolutely,
if they keep this up, I mean, whatever they put out next, I'll be there to watch it.
Yeah.
So
that's a great way to put it, Phil. I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, they made a very solid, entertaining movie. Not all of it works. I'd say for me, at least, the comedy, maybe 60%, 70% of it worked. But some of that stuff that worked pretty hard. I mean, my wife watched this with me. She thought it was pretty funny. She laughed out loud a couple times, and that's kind of hard to do for her. So
yeah, dude, the theater that I saw it with, the whole room was like cracking up and laughing, and so I'm actually looking forward to rewatching this in a couple of days, like to see if it still holds up on rewatch. Maybe I'll like it more, maybe I'll like it less. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to watch it with an audience. That's why sometimes I always take the opportunity, if I can, to see a movie with an audience. Being someone that screens movies and does a horror club and goes to the movies as much as I possibly can, it's like kind of part of my process in reviewing movies. But we don't always get those opportunities, and I did want to take a chance to see this a little early so we could get this review out for our listeners, because at the end of the day, this movie is absolutely worth seeing if it's something that you're interested in. I'm always going to champion and support slasher movies. I remember
original
too, yep. Pre-Halloween 2018. I remember before that, we would sit around and complain, where are slashers? We need more slashers. We need big slashers in theaters. I know for a fact I used to talk about it on this podcast all the time. And since that movie and Scream 5, we've been getting a ton of slashers, more now than probably ever before, outside of the 1980, 81, 83-ish, 82-ish rather, where they were just churned out one after another. I mean, we're getting them again, and it's enjoyable. Not all of them are great, but I think this is a good gateway slasher movie. So we're going to get to final thoughts and trash it or treasure it. Phil, are you going to trash or treasure Hell of a Summer?
I am surprisingly going to treasure this. I thought I was going to trash it, but no. I walked away from it having a good time, had some laughs, not scared one bit, but wasn't expecting to.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I actually thought about this a lot after watching it last night and this morning. Like, man, really, I'm kind of like, I always say this on the show, and people are like, shut the fuck up, dude. Either do a number rating or, figure out a different way. But it is very difficult having it be, basically good or bad, trash or treasure.
Right.
Because this would probably be on my lower rating scale, making it like a number rating. But it was fun. It did its job pretty well, and I got to give it credit. Did it blow my mind? No. Am I going to buy this thing on 4K Blu-ray when it comes out? Probably not, but I'm glad that I watched it, and I think there's a great audience for this movie out there just begging for this type of thing, and I think they'll enjoy it. So I'm going to treasure this movie as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our Fresh Fright review of Hell of a Summer. See it in theaters now, in select theaters actually, because I don't think it's showing in every theater everywhere, but check your local listings. I love saying that because I used to, I'm so fucking old, I used to call the theater phone number.
Yeah, check the back of the newspaper.
Yep. To find out showtimes. We didn't have the damn internet back then, boy.
No, we did not.
But yeah, thanks again, Phil, for joining me here. And for our listeners that want to find you and check you out and your content, let them know where they can do that.
Instagram, YouTube, the Spookhouse Podcast. And speaking of summer camp, I'm currently in the middle of editing the first ever Heavyweights full film locations. I went to actual Camp Hope, hit all the locations, so that should be up soon. Hopefully around the same time this episode comes out. But yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow on Instagram.
Awesome. Keep your eyes peeled for that, ladies and gentlemen. If this is your first time listening to the Epic Film Guys, thanks for checking us out. If you're a long-time listener, we love you so much. We can be found on every single podcast platform known to man, and of course, we're on social media everywhere at Epic Film Guys. Thanks again for listening. And thanks again, Phil, for joining me. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely.
Until next time, we'd like to ask you to keep it creepy.